What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
What is going on, everyone? Slashers and Sync here. Of course, I am the host, and I'm joined by the lovely
Marvalous. Hi.
So we are here with another Halloween special. We promised you guys to take a look and somewhat of a deep dive into the Halloween franchise, and we've already covered 1 through 3, the pseudo John Carpenter trilogy, even though he doesn't want to look at it and claim it as a trilogy.
I guess the original trilogy, if you want a different name for it.
Yeah, but if y'all haven't checked that episode out, go watch that and listen to it. You'll understand what I mean, because we talk a lot about John Carpenter and his views of movie 2 and what little help he did have with movie 3. But regardless of all that, we are here with the ever so controversial but also loved Thorn trilogy.
Yep.
Movies 4, 5, and 6. Now, unlike movie 3, it doesn't continue the anthology story. I feel like at this point, we're in the early to mid 80s. Jason is becoming a thing. I think the people who are working behind the scenes for the Halloween franchise, mostly like Mustafa Akkad, who's been carrying the torch for years now. I believe even their son now it has a hand, or at least is mentioned here and there in the credits of like the newer Halloween films by David Gordon Green. So that name Akkad is just attached to the Halloween franchise at this point. And they wanted Michael. They wanted the shape, and that makes sense because you want a face with whatever movie you're doing. And
definitely,
Jason, I think, was already by 84, like 3 movies in, and
this is when like the horror icons were really coming to their own.
And they didn't want to do an anthology. They wanted Michael.
Yeah, and I mean every single horror icon had their own franchise. I mean, you have Freddy, you have Michael, and you now because of 4, 5, and 6, and then you had Jason.
I think Freddy also came out that year, 84. Yeah,
he did. Yeah, and then there was also the Chucky films, like the original Child Play films that came out around that time.
Late 80s, right between 5 and 6, I think. Yeah.
Like there was a lot of horror coming out around that time, and I can see why. I can see why they really wanted to monopolize on the love for horror movies and like the classic vibes that the 80s horror movies gave off.
No, definitely.
They tried to.
Completely agree with that. And I think 4 is a very solid entry. I believe if you're not following us on TikTok, Slash and Sync, if y'all haven't got the gist of it, it's Slash and Sync for most of our socials. So just be on the lookout for that.
Someone took Slashers and Sync.
At least for Instagram, and then I kind of just stuck with Slash and Sync for everything.
Yeah.
Keep it nice, short, and sweet.
Yeah.
But you covered the movies that we've been watching, and she made a post and talked about how it's a 6.5 out of 10. I would actually rate it a little higher. I would put it like at a 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
But I also grew up with it.
Yeah, I did not. So for those of you who don't know, and I think I brushed up on it in the last episode, funny enough, I did not watch the Halloween franchise or the Halloween movies growing up at all. I got introduced to the franchise through 2018, Halloween 2018, like the original David Gordon Green film. So once I watched that film, I went down this rabbit hole of wanting to watch and rent all the Halloween films that were out there. And funny enough, it was around the time that you and I had started talking too, like just between you and us, our relationship.
Yeah.
And I kind of put that idea on the back burner just because I think you and I were watching a lot of films while we were doing long distance.
I think so.
Whenever I finally visited you for either the first or the second time, that's whenever we sat down and we started watching like the big horror icon movies. And I remember asking you so many questions about why aren't we watching 4? Why aren't we watching 5? Why aren't we watching 6? Like that doesn't make sense. What about 3? Like why are we watching 1 and 2 and then jumping to 2018 and then
I tell you, it's just too much to explain.
Essentially, you were just like, honestly, Michael's timeline is so fucked up, but so is like Freddy's and Jason's is to a certain degree too. So it just depends on like what kind of rabbit hole you really want to run down into. But eventually, I think it was either last year or a couple of years ago, you and I sat back and we watched everything. We watched all the Halloween movies. And I was able to really kind of like piece things together. And because I had you to explain everything to me, I could also categorize everything as well, and not like get confused as to why like Michael is still alive in 4 after, you know, being burnt to a crisp in front of our eyes in movie 2, or why suddenly he went from being, excuse me, like a supernatural being to a more like humanized individual. And
right.
it's not just the shape anymore. It is Michael, and there is a force behind Michael. Or if anything, somebody's like manipulating him from the shadows, if you will. So,
right.
I know for a fact if I had watched the movies without your explanations and without you being around, I either would have eventually made sense of it on my own, which I probably would have. But for sure, I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much as I do now. I probably would have tossed it to the side and been like, all right, here's another one for the books of just like the timeline going wonky and me not make sense of it. Or like not being able to make full sense of it. Like I can find justifications for the routes that they went down on, but it wouldn't click fully. Same with Jason, same with the Nightmare on Elm Street films, like same with the Sita Chucky or just like the Child Play films. Like all of these films, they started off strong, but then as the movies continued, they seemed to kind of like branch off in really different ways. And Halloween or Michael Myers is not exempt to this at all.
Funny enough, I was also scared to show you those movies because of the fact that the mask was so different, which is hilarious because one of the goofs, and I don't know if it's a goof in the sense that they did it on purpose or if they just forgot, but the mask on the movie poster looks nothing like the mask in Halloween 4. Yeah. It looks like the mask from movie 1.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious. Like that's some grade A masterclass clickbaiting, man.
I think so, yeah, because I'm not gonna I think you were the one who told me that the original mask got lost after the first film. So they could like never recover the original mask that was used. Right. And the one that's in 2018, I think you and I had watched some sort of like special to where they showed the production of the film. And I remember the person who, or I guess the silicone master or the person who made the mask said that he got the picture of the original mask and he considered on how it would look like if like 20 years had passed and the mask was still the very same one, how would it look like in today's day and age, or at the time, 2018?
Right, which is kind of mind-boggling to me because I would imagine it doesn't take that much money to at least have someone build a mask from scratch. I don't know if they did that before or if they had just got like some sort of like...
I think it takes a lot of talent. It's not the money, it's the talent.
Okay.
For sure.
Because I just feel like, I can't believe they couldn't find someone to replicate that mask, you know?
No, I honestly think it's the talent. And I mean, from what you were discovering just minutes ago about the production of the film and how cheap they tend to be, I'm not surprised as to why they didn't hire somebody of full talent, you know?
So, Halloween 4, as we said, does not continue the anthology series, and it wants to be something that bridges the gap to 2. Yeah. It's a direct continuation of 2. Michael is burnt, so is Loomis. Funny enough, in the fact trivia area on IMDb, they mentioned that there was a scene filmed to bridge the story with Halloween 2. It was a flashback to the finale of the hospital scene where Loomis is being tended to by paramedics when he sees the body of the shape burning. Yeah. Loomis exclaims to the EMS technicians to let him burn, and he screams at the top of his lungs. A similar moment occurs in Halloween Kills, where Laurie pays homage to that scene, saying, "Let it burn," after she sets her house on fire.
And they see the firefighters drive over.
Now, we don't see that scene in the film, so I guess it just didn't make the final cut, I'm assuming.
Probably not. It's probably floating out there
somewhere. Either that or like it's another one of these films that has a whole ass different version, theatrical cut or something.
Any type of like Halloween 4 that we've watched, I have never seen that film play out or that section play out before. Yeah. But I mean, I can still make sense of it.
It would have been cool to see that, actually. But I think that's kind of dope now, knowing that about the whole Let It Burn thing. That's an homage to what Loomis did. That's pretty cool. Yeah. But let's go ahead and get into Halloween 4. And as always, let us know y'all's thoughts down below about Halloween 4. And we're going to be covering 5 and 6 as well. So if we kind of bulldoze through this very quickly, that's probably why.
We're trying to fit 3 movies in like about an hour 10 at most. So we're not trying to keep it like how the other special episodes we did where it's like 2 hours long, because we're not trying to like yap your ears off.
Especially since it's all 5 weeks of Halloween content. So it's like, keep in mind too, like we did do a pretty good job on Halloween the first film last time, but just because of how much of a classic that film is, Marvelous and I might revisit that in the future.
Yes.
And dedicate a whole hour to just that film in and of itself. Because there's a whole docu-series on it that we didn't really even discuss. Like,
that is true.
the ins and outs of like how that movie almost wasn't made, the low budget of it, and just all that stuff.
The build-up of the movie and how iconic it became. And funny enough, like, I'm just going to throw this little, not even ad-lib, but like side note in there before we dive into the film. When I was doing a little bit of research on like the history of Halloween, like the holiday itself, John Carpenter's film made an impact on what Halloween is. To the point that when you go type in on Google, like the history of Halloween, you see a timeline, and literally on 1978, you click on it and there's a pop-up that says John Carpenter launched the Halloween movie that essentially like created the stepping stones for the like horror around the season of Halloween altogether. So like whether he intended to or not, it had a huge cultural impact.
Exactly. I mean, it's arguable, but I think Michael definitely is the biggest slasher, right? I would think like
one of the biggest for sure. I mean, right now I feel like art is probably his like biggest competitor, but he's also more modern and more contemporary than.
There's a lot of people who actually don't even know who he is, and I sometimes kind of get lost.
Art the Clown or Michael?
Art, and I kind of get lost in the sauce because I feel like we're such big horror fans that just because Damien and David are selling out conventions doesn't necessarily equate to the general audience of moviegoers who may not know who Art is. Plus, Michael's got like 50 years on him, or like
true.
Like or 30 years on him. So it's
Art. I think only came into fruition in like 2014.
Yeah, like 2013, 2014. That's why I correct him as like more like 30 or 40 years on him. But you know, either way. So Halloween 4, even though this was another Halloween film that was not filmed during fall, I think 6 is the only one filmed during fall.
Yeah.
Either 6 or 2018. I gotta double check. But this one has a very fall-like opening. Like it sets the tone for what this film is gonna be like, and it's showing like montages of just Haddonfield, like with orange leaves and everything. So
it's very different than the Halloween openings we're used to. Because in 1, 2, and 3, even though this timeline completely discards 3, we always see a pumpkin in one way, shape, or form. In the beginning when the credits are rolling. This, I think, is the only film, or I guess the film, that starts off the trend within this trilogy where there are no pumpkins in the beginning. This is just shot for shot, panel for panel, like you said, of the Haddonfield town. Yeah,
because Season of the Witch still has like a digital pumpkin, like a pixelated one, right? Yeah, that's true.
I don't remember anything in 5, and I don't think I remember anything in 6 as far as seeing a pumpkin. It was just the title card, and then that was it.
Did you like the vibe of this, though? Like, switching it up? Like, did you...
I very much became attuned to the pumpkins in the beginning. Not just because of like the original timeline, but also because of David Gordon Green's. However, I understand that every timeline has their own interpretation of what Michael should be. So I'll take it.
So Michael is still alive after being blown up, having his entire body set on fire.
Shot in the eyes.
Fire coming out of his eye sockets. Yep. And his mask was being melted onto his face.
Yep.
Whatever. We're introduced to Jamie, the daughter of Laurie. She lives with Rachel and her parents because Laurie died off screen in a car crash. Or did she?
I mean, at this point, for sure, she's dead.
I should have looked at them when I said that. I don't know why I looked at you.
No, it's okay. At this point in the timeline, and I mean, as far as the audience member knows, but Laurie's dead. Jamie is an orphan. Like,
she has dreams about Michael.
Who she does not know, like, who is. He just, I think she just calls him the Nightmare Man. She doesn't even call him the Boogeyman. It's literally, I saw a dream of the Nightmare Man again.
Yeah.
So that already is like insinuating some form of weird relationship or tie between Jamie and Michael.
And right around this time, it's also cutting back and forth with the people who, I guess, from Smith's Grove. They're moving him to Smith's Grove. They came and picked him up, and they took him out of like some crazy Tim Burton looking type of like hollow, like insane asylum. Like, there's people screaming in the background.
Yeah.
I didn't write the quote down, but there was a pretty cool scene from like the random security guard there where I think someone screams and then one of the escorters says like, "Oh, Jesus," and he's like, "Oh, Jesus has nothing to do with this place or something.
Yeah.
I thought that was like a pretty cool line. But we see Michael all bandaged up like he's a fucking mummy. It looks hilarious. But
he's fresh off the press.
And then when his hand drops as they're moving him, that's I think the first time we see the curse of Thorn mark on him, right? Because we had only saw it drawn in Halloween 2. I don't think we saw the tattoo of it on his wrist.
No, we never saw it. But at the same time, to give credit to the producers and the directors, we had never seen Michael outside of a long sleeve outfit. So
yeah, even in the first film, it was raining. He was in a hospital.
Even when he was a
robe,
kid, we couldn't tell. So like this, we see the Thorn mark. We see a mark on his wrist that we later on learn is called the Thorn mark.
Yes, my bad. This movie's old. I don't mean to spoil y'all, but if I haven't seen it, what are y'all doing with yourselves? I'm just saying.
It's been out for about 40 years. I'm sorry.
Michael kills the doctors in the ambulance after they attempted to move him. And did you notice that they only killed him after they mentioned that he has a living relative?
Yep.
So, and then of course he kills him by like stuffing his finger into his skull.
Yep.
This movie introduces like the Jason-like power, like where he's a lot stronger than the Michael from before. To be fair, the Michael in movie 1 and 2 did lift two different people at the same time.
Had a lot of strength.
But this is the one where like the kills are like barehanded, just ripping you apart.
Like you said, on par with Jason. On par with Jason Voorhees for sure. He's not... It's weird because they try and make Michael seem more human, but at the same time, he comes off as being not so human. He's dancing on that fine line.
Yeah, and you're the one who brought that up the first time we watched Halloween 4, actually, but we'll get to that gas station scene a little later. But yeah, like Michael, who killed Annie in movie 1, took like at least 4 to 5 minutes to strangle her. It was a very slow, methodical, a very intense kill.
Yeah.
But yet, I feel like if this Michael had her by the neck, he would have ripped her head off in that amount of time. Like it's
probably
very different type of kill. But
maybe, who knows? He was just a little too burned, and he didn't feel the sensation of pain and just went.
Also, similar to, I think you're the one who wrote this in, similar to Halloween 2018, that he's being moved and that's when he escapes, stuff like that. So
yeah, there's a lot of parallels. There is a lot of parallels, and I mean, obviously, it's not Halloween 4 that took notes from 2018. It's 2018 who took notes from Halloween 4.
And by the way, Loomis is alive.
Yeah, it's not just Michael that survived. It's also Loomis, which still blows my mind.
Only half of his face and one of his arms is burned.
And it's just a scar. It's not like any form of disfiguration or anything like that. It's just a giant scar.
He was in that room when it blew up. He was in that room.
The Haddonfield universe is crazy, because if that's what happens whenever you burn, then that's fine. But Ben Tramer seems to be the one person who doesn't fit that mold.
Yeah, at least that version of Ben Tramer. He sets off to find Michael, and he finds him at a gas station with a very cool standoff scene. Very like, I don't know if it was an homage to like the Westerns, but I could have felt like a tumbleweed just kind of like fly across there.
Especially with the opening scenes that they had. Yeah, definitely.
But Loomis is at his best in this movie for sure. Like right away, he's telling Dr. Wynn, like the same one who I guess he was there from movie 1.
Yeah.
Which he plays a bigger part later. We'll get into. But that dude's been recasted a lot. Anyways, he's telling Dr. Wynn like he's not a man. Like you guys are looking at it wrong.
Yeah, he's deceived you.
Yeah, the cops say we've seen people thrown 60 feet from a crash site. Michael doesn't believe it. I'll give you guys 3 hours to find him, but I bet your fucking asses by then I've already found him.
Loomis doesn't believe it.
Yeah.
You mentioned Michael, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael essentially caused the EMT drivers to crash over a bridge.
It's a crazy ass crash. If we had saw that shit, that would have been like flying in the air.
It would have been like spinning, doing like all kinds of 360s left and right. But somehow the EMT car ended up in the water from a bridge. All the bodies are in there except for one, Michael's. And Loomis is the only one who's convinced that Michael is still alive and out there. Yeah. So he says, I'll give you 4 hours to try and find him. And during those 4 hours, I'm driving to Haddonfield because I know I will find him there.
Right. And he does. And
just not in Haddonfield.
Which I feel like that's the scene where when we watched the movie for the first time, when I'm showing Marvelous the film for the very first time, she looks at me and says, wow, Michael's a lot more like almost like a ghost in this film. Because the way he stands there, there's almost even less emotion than 1 and 2. We don't get that type of emotionless Michael until movie like 2018 and like Kills. Like Loomis is just staring across at him and he's not moving an inch. Loomis then pulls out his gun, aims it at him. I'm telling you, he's got the blick right in his face, shoots him, and Michael's gone.
He is very much ghost-like. And that's what I said, like, and that's what I meant earlier when I said, like, he's dancing on the fine line between being more human and being more supernatural.
Right.
Because, yeah, he's not expressing as many emotions anymore, but at the same time, we see him bleed.
Exactly.
This is the first movie that shows Michael bleed. I mean, other than him being shot in the eyes from Laurie, his younger sister, but they just look like tear marks. It's not like actual blood. It's not only that, but as time passes, Michael starts expressing emotions more vividly. It's not as internalized. You can tell his body language changes. You can tell like things aren't the same anymore. As far as like if something triggers him just right, you can tell he's seeing red, at least in this timeline. But in the beginning parts, he's very elusive. And I'm not going to lie, the first time I watched this film, whenever Jamie was having the nightmare of Michael, I was convinced he was in the room. And more likely than not, he wasn't. But at the same time, like, again, I was convinced that he was there because it just felt not only too realistic, but Michael was just moving way too much like how he used to in 1978.
And by the way, Nick Castle isn't back for this, and I don't even think the actor from movie 2 is back for this.
No, I think it's George Wilbur. George Wilbur right now is being the one who's playing Michael.
So we kind of skipped over a scene where Rachel's parents, Jamie's foster home, like, you know, they mentioned how Rachel has to babysit now, and because he has to go to a party or something. Who really gives a shit? The only point of that scene is because Rachel's gonna be with
Rachel has to shoe in for the babysitter because the babysitter got sick conveniently enough on Halloween night. We know she didn't really get sick, but I mean,
it's like the equivalent of like, you know, Mr. Strode telling Laurie in movie 1, like, go drop that off at the house. Like, it's just a quick scene. It's whatever.
Yeah.
All that it did was just tell us Rachel's gonna be with Jamie tonight. That's all it did.
Essentially, I mean, Rachel threw a fit about it, but I'm neither here nor there.
So Jamie gets bullied at school, and
a lot,
bro, those kids are
mean.
Yeah,
kids are fucking mean. Period. I don't care if it was in the 80s, the 90s, the thousands, the 2010s, 20s. They're mean. They're always mean.
They all know that Michael is her uncle, and which I guess does make some sense.
At this point, it's public knowledge.
Yeah. When Rachel picks her up to calm her down, they had to get her a costume, and they also mentioned the Dairy Queen. Kind of funny.
Yeah. Mentioned to go get ice cream. And funny,
I think it's just funny listening to older films, especially like ones in small towns, and bring up Dairy Queen, because like I don't want to sound elitist or arrogant, but it's like with us, because we live in the OC, it's like, you know, we got like Wonderlust and like Salt and Straw places, like Handles, like places like that. Like
you got good ice cream is what he's trying to say.
Yeah, Dairy Queen. Again, I don't want to sound like, you know,
Dairy Queen's so good. Don't get me wrong.
It's not a thought in our head, so it is kind of.
It's an afterthought.
Yeah. It's kind of funny to see that be like a thing in the older films. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good. I mean, the interesting thing about this point of the film is that Jamie makes it very apparent to Rachel that she wants to go trick-or-treating and she actually wants to partake in the Halloween tradition, if you will. And this is a surprise to Rachel because I think the family of Rachel knows that Jamie easily gets triggered around Halloween time because of her mom. So, like, by Jamie coming to her and saying, no, I want to go trick-or-treating, let's go and get a costume, that's what, like, throws in Rachel for a loop, but she kind of monopolizes on that idea because not even her boyfriend, I'm going to call him her boy toy.
Brady
works at the Bargain Mart, I think it's what it's called.
Yeah.
Which is where they're selling the Halloween costumes in Haddonfield, and because it's Halloween Day, they're having sales on Halloween costumes.
Which I don't know the actor's name. I had to look it up, but he's the one who is also the guy who likes to fuck a lot in Dazed and Confused. So this guy gets typecasted, I think.
He's a fuckboy before the term fuckboy came to be.
It was so shocking to me to see him because I saw Halloween 4 as a kid, but you're not like connecting dots at that point.
No.
So seeing him in Dazed and Confused when I watched that movie with my dad, and then going back to Halloween 4, I was just like, that's the guy who said when he gets to college, he wants to bang, 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 bang. So I was like, okay, that's cool.
Bang, 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 bang.
He's there.
Then.
All right. So they're at the store where Brady works,
Yep.
and this is where she gets to pick a costume. And Marvelous, the costume is very similar to the one Michael wore.
Almost identical.
Almost identical.
A 1-for-1 to what Michael wore when he was a kid, around the same age that Jamie was, and when he had his first kill. Like, an absolute parallel.
She encounters Michael, who's there's a lot of like drama with Rachel and Brady. I do not really care.
I don't either.
So it's
essentially, Brady just likes to mess around with the chief's daughter because Rachel told Brady that, hey, I can't hang out with you. I have to babysit my foster sister.
Yeah.
And Brady decides to lick his wounds, but not with his own saliva.
We'll find it out later, too. She encounters Michael, who's made it to Haddonfield. It's a brief encounter because she believes that she imagined it, the Nightmare Man again.
Yep.
But this is also the scene where Michael gets his mask, which is how we know it really happened.
Mm-hmm.
The mask, man. Yeah.
It hurts, but it's not as bad.
Once you get over it, I feel like you can enjoy this movie a lot. Because, again, Marvelous rates it at a 6.5 out of 10. I rate it higher at a 7.5. So I feel like once you just get the mask out of your head and just realize it's not coming back.
At least not at this point in time.
Yeah. You can enjoy the movie for what it is.
Yeah.
Loomis then finally makes it to Haddonfield a little bit later. Then Michael, he recruits the help of Sheriff Meek, who replaced Brackett because Brackett retired. And Sheriff Meek, of course, does not want to believe Loomis, but once they try to make a couple phone calls, they can't get through. And it's because Michael fucked up the power line, didn't he? Like,
he fucked up the power line and he slaughtered the entire police station.
Well, we didn't get to that point yet, but he does do that. And I'll actually, since you brought it up, I'm going to go ahead and say this right now. If that scene was shot and filmed and we got to see it, that would probably be up there with Michael's like mob scene in the kills.
I would think so.
Like, I feel like that would have been an awesome fucking scene.
Yeah.
Like pay homage to fucking like Terminator as well too. Like when he fucked up the police station, like that would have been so dope, bro.
It would have fit very much the mold that was coming out in the 80s. Again, this movie seemed to be following certain trends, but taking its own twist. There's something that I did want to touch up on. As the movie progresses, Michael seems to become more and more elusive and more ghost-like, but at the same time, more and more human as well. Because Loomis starts seeing more images of him. Jamie keeps seeing like visions of him too, but he's almost like teleporting. He's not even like really walking from space to space. Because Loomis is on one area of the town, Jamie's in another area of the town, and then they eventually cross paths. But how are you gonna fucking tell me that Michael's on north side of Haddonfield and suddenly appears in south side of Haddonfield for Loomis? That makes no sense.
If Halloween 2 1981 introduced to the masses the meme that Michael walks slow, this movie introduced the meme that Michael teleports.
Pops up everywhere.
Yeah. We're not even like, I know we're skipping around at this point, but we're not even counting like the school scene where Michael was like around the area where Rachel was.
Yep.
But yet Loomis who found Jamie like halfway through the city of Haddonfield, and then they made their way to the school. Mm-hmm. But yet Michael was already inside the school waiting for them. Doesn't he pop out of a door, right? Like he was already in the school.
He just doink, and they all have a fucking meltdown.
But anyway, we jumped way ahead. We'll get back to it. So Rachel takes Jamie trick-or-treating. Michael's making his way around town and kills the worker of a plant, and again cuts all the power to Haddonfield, very similar to the phone line. Mm-hmm. So, and that very much sets the tone for this movie because the movie's in the dark a lot now. Like
everybody's in also a state of panic because of that.
Yeah, like the movie has to set it to where we as the viewers can see like the hue of the moon and like the bluish lights. But we have to think about these actors and these actresses, or think about this end universe. When Jamie's walking around, it's like probably pitch black out there.
Probably.
You know?
There's no street lights. the only thing that's illuminating her way is the moonlight, and Haddonfield is thick with trees.
Yeah.
So she can't really see. There's a reason why she's tripping on everything.
Exactly. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
And funny enough, let's throw in a little bit of a fun fact here. When Jamie's running around through the town screaming for help, one of the homeowners actually ends up calling the cops because they truly think that she's in trouble. And the whole incident gets reported on what's called the Enquirer. I'm assuming it's like the form of like local news or some form of news outlet. And the Enquirer made it seem like as if the cops were showing up because they thought that she was being kidnapped off of a set. But she was on set. She just had to run off into the street to get more homes in the shot.
That's crazy.
So, yeah.
That's crazy.
It's pretty cool. Her running up and down screaming help and banging on those doors, it worked. Just not in the way that they thought it would.
Well, at least people listen to this version, unlike Laurie.
Yeah.
So Loomis and Meek eventually find Rachel and Jamie, who are separated. After making their way back to the police station, they find all of Meek's men murdered, as Marvin mentioned before.
Yep.
Again, going back, that scene would have been epic if we got to see it. I think it would have cemented a pretty good idea of just like what this Michael was like if we had got to see it. But
it also emphasizes the whole teleportation thing because he goes from the power plant all the way to the fucking police station.
Yeah.
Unless they're right next to each other and you and I just missed it.
I don't think Haddonfield's that small. But I mean, I feel like it has to be smaller than my old hometown. But who knows? We'll see. Loomis then informs just a bunch of people, like one of the guys who owns the bar, a bunch of town drunk, stuff like that, that Michael's back. And some of these guys had their kids who were murdered, relatives, whatever. Because you have to remember, we're counting the hospital too from Halloween 2.
Yeah.
So these people had friends, relatives, kids, all murdered back then. And this is also, again, very similar to Halloween Kills, just executed differently.
The whole town is rallying against Michael. They're all in fear, but they all are also wanting to make sure that fear doesn't fully consume them and they retaliate against it. And the fear turns them into monsters themselves.
So everyone meets up at Meek's house, which freaks out Brady and Kelly. And Kelly's the chief's daughter. So Brady decided, since he didn't get to have Rachel that night, he would go with the chief's daughter, who also works with them at the store. And
apparently most guys are trying to get with her. So
yeah,
Brady seems to have some sort of game.
It's like a W for him.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. They all end up waiting for the state troopers. Michael was there, of course, because a deputy didn't notice him in his back seat. A 6'2", 260-pound man in his back seat. He's wearing a mask.
Breathes heavy. Did not notice him in the back seat.
It's funny too, because aren't cops like trained to check their back seat like every like?
Yeah, and the doors are usually locked. So
that's hilarious.
This cop wasn't all there.
I bet you Michael's in the back thinking, I don't have to walk.
I can just rest for a little bit. All right, let me just take a quick nap.
Because don't they kind of show the way he's laying down? Like he's like on his back, like legs are kind of curled up. Like
he's like torso twisted, legs curled up, but back is just kind of like this. I think his back is what's preventing him from like being thrown left and right and all across the back seat of the car. I don't know. He figured it out. We're good.
So at one point, Rachel and Kelly have a cat fight over Brady, and Michael comes in and wipes out everyone there except Loomis and Meek, who had left earlier.
Yep.
And Rachel and Jamie. Brady tried to get a couple points with me there. He took on Michael one-on-one.
He tried.
Didn't work out.
No.
He's not in the rest of them.
No. Man gets piped by the shotgun because of Michael.
So Brady wasn't doing the piping that night.
No, the shotgun did.
So after Rachel gets knocked out, Jamie is saved by Loomis and they head to the school for safety. But somehow, some way, Michael's already there. Takes out Loomis.
Teleportation, man.
Instant transmission. Jamie is once again saved by the townsfolk who are able to take her and Rachel to meet the troopers. I like how when they get there, they're ready to go guns a-blazing, this and that, right? And then as soon as they're like, he'll kill you, don't go in there. Yeah, man, save it for the troopers. This is what they get paid for. They all hop in the...
They wuss out.
But anyways, Michael is there, of course.
Yeah.
Because he was hiding under a single-door pickup going 90 miles per hour.
Under
it.
He's on some fucking Spider-Man shit at this point.
He, of course, takes out every single person while the car is going, by the way. Also, nice little homage to Halloween 78. He breaks the windshield almost exactly like how he did in movies, 78. But
except this time he doesn't have a wrench in his hand.
Have a wrench, yeah. After Rachel takes out Michael by hitting him with the car, the troopers and Meek kill him by just unloading on him, bro. Like, they all got a whole bunch of weapons. They destroy him.
I think at least 30 to 40 shots are unloaded into him.
Yeah.
Because you just see his body shake and then fall into a mini ditch.
Yeah.
After all the shots. Like, you have 5 or 6 people who have all different kinds of gun unloading on this man.
Yeah. Everyone is back at the Carruthers house, but Jamie is now Michael, I guess, as she kills her stepmother to end the film. She puts on the mask. She's got the iconic clown suit.
She's breathing like him.
Loomis is fucking lost it at this point.
He just starts screaming no when he finds out that Jamie killed her foster mom or stepmom or whatever.
He took the blicky out quick. He was about to just put some lead in her, bro.
Yeah,
and
he was ready.
Yeah.
And that, I feel like, kind of fed into the idea that I had, at least first time watching this movie, that Jamie was going to either take on the mantle of being Michael Myers or be an assistant to Michael Myers. One of the two. This was my conviction. And I guess Danielle Harris, the actress for Jamie, also thought that too. And I wouldn't blame her.
Yeah, no, for sure. So Halloween 4, I rated 7.5 out of 10. Is your rating still the same?
Still the same, 6.5. I enjoyed it. I think it's a good continuation. I have my gripes with it, but it's not enough for me to hate it. It's not a movie that I can watch on a continuous basis. I will say that much. It's not like a movie I can put in the background and just let it play. But it's a movie that I can enjoy whenever I am watching it.
So we're going to go to Halloween 5. Marvelous and I wrote notes for Halloween 5, but I'm honestly not going to look at them because I'm going to keep it a buck with y'all. I really fucking hate this movie. Like, this movie is like a 2 out of 10 to me. Maybe even a 1.5 out of 10. The only thing that probably saves it is a little bit of the Loomis stuff, kind of, and then the soundtrack. And the soundtrack, even if itself isn't the best out of the franchise, it's just the iconic theme that I still like, no matter how many times it gets remixed.
So I think it was Halloween 4 that I said I don't really like the music for because it sounds too 80s-esque.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the reason why I also talked down the points, is the music as well for my rating.
I don't mind it too much, but I get your point.
I couldn't take Michael seriously anytime he showed up and they were trying to play his theme.
Like, everything was like an electronic remix, right?
It felt like it was synthesized, yeah. This movie brought it back to the old piano riff that we're all used to. I feel like that's why I don't necessarily enjoy the film, but I can tolerate it more than you can because of the music. I'm very much does the music match the tone type of person.
So, Halloween 5 picks up directly after 4.
Yep.
Literally taking the ending of 4, which other films have done.
Yeah.
And or at least 2 did with 1. So they replay that whole scene. This time, instead of just unloading on him, they throw a fucking they throw dynamite down there, actually. It's dynamite. Michael escapes. And then he bunks away with some dude who found him and takes care of him for a year. But much kind of like the David Gordon Green trilogy, he's kind of in a comatose state. The way they shot that scene was almost as if Michael was at this guy's house asleep for an entire fucking year. He doesn't wake up and kill him. Yeah, he doesn't wake up and kill that old man until Jamie starts freaking out. And that's the night before Rachel. That had to have been October 30th the next year.
Yeah.
What was that old man doing with Michael that whole year?
I guess giving him IVs.
No baby oil?
No Diddy, relax.
No Diddy.
Relax.
So anyways, yeah, the movie picks up with that, and there's a lot of interesting points about this film that I feel like I disagree with. So do you. And we're not the only ones. Like she said, Danielle Harris, who played Jamie Lloyd, Donald Pleasance, who played Loomis, the late great Donald Pleasance, was actually very vocal about his dissatisfaction with the story and with the way the director Dominic. Oh, how do you say that? Othenian?
Yeah, we'll just say it at that.
Okay. Othenian Gerard was trying to get him to play Dr. Loomis as a total heavy and overbearing character. He was a little overbearing in this movie.
He was obsessed. He was obsessed with Jamie. He was obsessed with Michael.
Yeah.
And in my eyes, it almost came off like he was consistently harassing Jamie, trying to get some form of information out of her, telling her, you need to talk to me. I don't understand why you're not saying anything. Why are you protecting him? Like, you understand that he's going to kill, right? And poor Jamie, she's like, what, 7, 8 at most, trying to live her life, is completely mute, can't talk, goes into almost like a near-death experience anytime she's connecting with Michael. Yeah. And she just can't talk. But Loomis is pushing her to try and speak, but at this point in the movie, she can't. She genuinely cannot. She is a mute. The only person who seems to really care for her is her nurse.
Right. And I feel like Loomis from movie 4.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll say, yeah, fuck that. Yeah, even movie 4 Loomis from the previous film, I don't even think that Loomis would have grabbed Jamie Lloyd by the shoulders and squeeze her and scream in her face like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
I feel like that's, and I think Donald Pleasance agreed with that. That just doesn't seem like Loomis's character, no matter how obsessed he was with Michael. Like, he wouldn't just grab some kid like that and just, and even later in the film, doesn't he like pull like a girl by like the shoulder and like just because he thinks it's Jamie? Like, it's like he was very overbearing in this film. Like,
he was obsessed, but in like the worst way possible.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure Donald has tried to do his best to pull back on that kind of energy. But I mean, you can only do it so far when you're looking for a paycheck. And no disrespect to Donald at all. At all. But he did it as best as he could, I feel like.
So in the title card, this movie only says Halloween 5. But it's marketed in every poster, every DVD cover, all says Revenge of Michael Myers. But it is just Halloween 5 in the film, which is kind of interesting. So Donald Pleasance also had disagreements with Mustafa Akkad and Gerard, citing that Jamie should have been portrayed as the all-evil after stabbing her stepmother. Akkad disagreed, thinking that fans wanted to see more of the Shape. And again, I think that just kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier, that they want a horror icon.
That's it.
I don't think Akkad, rest in peace, and anyone else from that era didn't want to see Jamie walking around carrying the blade. I think they wanted someone like an imposing person like Michael.
Yeah, they're not trying to pass on the mantle. They're trying to make the mantle stay on forever.
Especially since Halloween 4 had a huge box office. It was ultimate success.
Yeah.
At least story-wise, to Donald Pleasance and Danielle Harris, it just made sense for Jamie to be the killer, but I guess they didn't want that. But it looks like they might have been right, because Halloween 5 is the lowest grossing film in the entire franchise. Box Office Mojo reports it only made $11 million against a budget of $5.5 million.
And that's a lot for that day and age. So it barely made its money back and then some.
Yep. So anyways, the film overall, I wasn't a big fan of. There was a lot of stuff that I didn't like with Rachel being killed off within like the first 20 minutes.
Yeah, and she's not the reason why Jamie starts talking again. It's her friend Tina that gets her to start talking again.
Yeah.
Which is really weird.
A character we're just introduced to. It's not even Lindsay from the previous film.
No, I would think maybe Lindsay, because Lindsay was there driving her around, taking her to the bargain mart.
We would have to assume that, that they probably hung around a lot because of Rachel. So.
Yeah, so it's just, there's a lot of holes. But once Jamie starts talking again, she seems to be convinced to want to keep Tina alive. Tina wants to go and live out her own life because she's a teenager. It's Halloween night. She wants to go party. And Jamie's cute little psychiatry ward is having like a Halloween costume contest. It seems that anytime Jamie is about to be put on the spot in any way, shape, or form, Michael is about to do some crazy ass shit.
Yeah.
And because of the connection, Jamie, like I mentioned earlier, always seems to have like a near-death encounter because of it.
Yeah.
So now it's Halloween night. Michael is about to go ham for his kills. And I'm assuming he's stalking Tina or stalking somebody who is within Tina's age group.
That is Tina, yeah.
One or the other. And Jamie has a total fucking meltdown in front of all the staff members, all the parents, and anybody who showed up for the costume pageant at her psychiatry ward.
Yeah.
And Loomis is there. And he is watching her just fall apart to the seams. And he seems to be almost like, anytime that she is having this meltdown, Loomis isn't concerned for Jamie's well-being. He is concerned about where Michael is. That's it. And again, I feel like that doesn't really play into Donald's character all too well, or Loomis all too well, because while Loomis is obsessed, he still cares for his patients. This right here shows complete disregard to the well-being of Jamie. But
he's always put Laurie first and Jamie first, you know. So.
Yeah, so eventually Jamie is still seizing, but she tells Loomis exactly what's going on, and law enforcement gets involved in not necessarily apprehending Tina, but getting Tina away from Michael, and then she eventually gets dropped off at the party that she wants to be at.
This is probably another reason why I'm very negative on this film. I apologize. That's another reason why I don't like this film is her friends. I feel like I mentioned this to you briefly, but I don't think I went too in depth.
Yeah.
This movie makes me think Friday the 13th characters were picked up, transported, and dropped into this movie.
Yeah.
Even Rachel had a serious side to her. Like a lot of people in these films, they took themselves very seriously. Like it was a serious film. Mm-hmm. You know, like that's not the case here. Like Tina is just
wanting to party.
Really overboard party goer, which is fine. But then you add in her mix of friends who are matching that energy, if not more. And that dude who like screams with the blade out, you know, like pretending to be Michael for that one prank, just screams like Kevin Bacon or like random blonde guy who's trying to replace Kevin Bacon in the Friday the 13th films. Like it just does not feel like characters that should exist in Haddonfield. No. You know?
And I guess this really goes hand in hand to where you and I were saying earlier that all these films and all these slasher icons are really competing with each other, and everybody was trying to take notes from each other. However, that given point right there felt like I lost what Michael really was. And I lost what Halloween movies really are, which is people who are petrified of the boogeyman, or once the killing starts, they start taking things seriously. Like these kids at the party did not seem to care about the fact that Michael was going around hunting. They genuinely thought that they were invincible. And like you mentioned in Tina's friend group, one guy fully dresses up as him and nearly pranks the cops and gets the cops to pull the trigger on him, almost thinking that he really is Michael. So it's just weird. As
an example to what Marv was saying, like Rachel, if she was at that party, I don't think she would have put up with that.
I don't think so either. I mean, she had a full encounter with Michael, so I don't blame her.
And Tina, who's supposedly now all of a sudden Rachel's best friend. It's one thing like in movie 4 where those 3 kids dressed up as Michael to scare Loomis.
Yeah.
Or I don't even think they were trying to scare Loomis. They were just
pulling a prank on the cops.
It just happened to be Loomis and Rachel and them were in the car.
Yeah.
That's different than Tina, who's directly shown to be some important figure in Jamie's life, and also all of a sudden Rachel's best friend, to be pulling a prank like that. Mm-hmm. Like, come on, like that just.
It didn't make sense. It just felt like stupid high schoolers doing stupid shit, and they're about to get killed for it because of it. And we're right. The trio sneak away into a barn. The guy and the other girl, not Tina, seem to like be dating, and they're about to get it on. Tina excuses her way out, and Michael is already in the barn and starts slashing at the both of them, which is a kill that I was actually waiting for, because the scene leading up to the kill was a bit much.
Yeah.
I always feel uncomfortable, and I always end up going on my phone whenever that scene's playing, but whenever the kill comes, I look up eagerly because I'm ready for the 2 of them to die.
Talking about the sex scene.
Yep.
Okay. Wanted to make sure. Yeah, that's very long, dude. I don't know why that is such a long, intimate scene. Again, doesn't really fit Halloween. That again feels like a Friday the 13th type of situation.
Yep.
I guess they wanted sex in that movie. I don't know.
But after this, Michael really starts going on the killing spree. He is just like starting to pick everybody left and right at the party. Tina goes looking for her friends and sees their corpses, starts freaking out. And she also like goes for the cops who dropped her off, but they've also been killed by Michael. So now she's just on her own.
Yeah, by the way, I can't be the only one who's tripping, right? When those cops first show up, there's like a squeaky, quacky like soundtrack that plays when they walk.
Yeah, no, it does not whenever they walk. Whenever they first get introduced, it's supposed to let the audience know that these cops are dits. They're not supposed to be taken seriously.
Again, what the fuck, bro? This ain't a Halloween movie, dog. Like,
all the cops have always been serious. This is the first time we get a duo that's just dumb as fuck. But again, that plays into the Friday the 13th and almost like Freddy Krueger vibes where the police are just, woo.
Like that one cop that shows up, y'all smoking the devil's lettuce, right? Like, y'all not doing that here.
Yeah.
Like it's... Just... Anyways,
at this point in time, Jamie has ran away from the institution with her cute little boyfriend with the stutter. I'm gonna call him cute little boyfriend.
Yeah.
And she's trying to make her way to Tina because she is trying to save Tina. God bless her soul. Jamie actually does save Tina.
Yeah. But then they start getting chased by Michael, who is in the car that was owned by Tina's boyfriend, who was also named Michael. I can't make this shit up.
Meta as fuck.
Michael kills Michael and takes his car. This is where we're also introduced. We skipped over it, but it's a good point to bring it up now that you talked about the scene where with Jamie showing up to help Tina. We're introduced to the Man in Black. He's standing around when Michael drives off with the car. Yeah,
this is a little earlier in the film.
Yeah.
Right now we're at the part of the barn, like close towards the end of the film. But earlier in the film we see the Man in Black.
When Michael took the car, we see the Man in Black, and that's our first introduction to this entity, like this man who just seems to be walking around. Now,
giant cloak, steel pointed shoes, big old hat.
Looks very familiar. I just can't put my finger on it. I feel like that's a silhouette for something else. At first, I was thinking maybe the Creeper from Jeepers Creepers.
No.
But some other silhouette. Maybe y'all can let us know in the comments what I might be thinking of. But we see him, right? And that plays a bigger part later into what this whole, I guess, franchise, or excuse me, not franchise, but this timeline of films ends up being.
Yeah.
But from what we're told and what we're shown later on in movie 6, we're supposed to assume that this guy has been around since Halloween 1.
Yeah.
We know the character behind it too, which we're not going to reveal yet, but he's been around since movie 1. So I guess
at least in this timeline story.
So in a way, he's been pulling the strings for a lot of shit to happen.
When is it whenever Loomis talks about Sam Hain? Is it in 5 or is it in 2? It's in 2. So we get an idea of like Sam Hain, or what Halloween was originally called by the Celtics.
Yes, because at first we believed it was Michael. It may not have been him. Someone broke into Michael's old school and wrote Sam Hain on the chalkboard, and
there was like a drawing of what we now know to be the Thorn symbol on the back of like a piece of artwork that Michael did whenever he was really young.
So again, it's just, that may not have been Michael, it may have been this guy, but at least in this timeline,
this is the first time that we see him on screen.
Yeah, this is the first time we see him on screen, but in this timeline, he's supposed to have been around this entire, I guess
he's
story.
Been in the sidelines, either in the shadows or right behind Michael, whispering in its ear. However you want to interpret it, he's always been there.
I stayed entirely too long on the Man in Black, so I'm gonna let Marva take over with Jamie and her boyfriend Billy and Tina getting chased by a car.
So flashing back forward to the barn scene, Tina gets saved by Billy and Jamie. They're running around. Jamie is trying to get Michael's attention so this way Michael doesn't kill Tina. Michael finally notices Jamie, starts chasing her with the car instead, and I don't know what happens, but Michael, or at least I don't remember what happens, I should say. Michael eventually ends up out of the car and starts chasing Jamie. And then Tina's also trying to distract Michael from Jamie so this way she can stay alive too. All in all, it's a constant like baton fight between the two of them where they're like really trying to make sure that everybody stays alive. I don't know. Eventually, Loomis also shows up, and he eventually gets to Jamie, and they head to Michael's old house, and they lay a trap for Michael. So eventually, we get to the final showdown,
which is not the original house.
It is not the original house. The movie tries to make it seem like it's the original house, but it is not. The final showdown begins, and Michael kills all the cops that are stationed at his house for the trap. Jamie eventually comes face to face with her uncle and even calls him that. They have a strange moment of connection, but not without Michael lashing out and trying to kill her. And this falls back to the same line that I was using, that Michael seems to be more human, but also at the same time not, because this is the first time we see Michael trying to process and understand his emotions right after Jamie calls him uncle.
There's even a scene, did you talk about when Loomis talked to him and how he was almost able to grab the knife from Michael's hand?
For a split second. Yeah, no, I didn't mention that.
So that also goes back to what you're saying, that he's showing a lot more emotion in this movie than he did in 4, and definitely a lot more than any other version of Michael, I think.
Yeah,
because even movie 6, Michael's a little more
stoic.
Yeah, right,
Because I think movie 2 just shows him with a lot of rage, nothing else, no range of emotions. This is the first time where we see confusion and just almost hesitation.
Yeah.
But
the idea that you can stop him in his tracks by just saying his name, or
just saying uncle,
if you have a connection to him anyways,
Yeah. And Loomis, because of that interaction with the knife, Michael lashes out, and the way that he lashes out makes the audience think that Loomis is now dead. But he still shows up after Jamie calling Michael her uncle officially. And
pretty good chase scene around the house, by the way.
Yeah.
It was actually pretty decent. One of the highlights of the film, but again, I still have to knock points off, bro. It's not the original house. It looks nothing like the original house, dude.
No,
you can tell they did not give a fuck when they came to doing that set.
I think you mentioned that it's just the patio or the front porch that looks very similar to the original house, but kinda. That's it.
It looks more like the murder house from AHS than it does Michael's house.
Yeah, either that or Nancy's house from Freddy Krueger, from Nightmare on Elm Street.
Because talking about the murder house has that almost where the house bulges into a pillar, and it has that one window at the top where you always see Evan Peters staring out of. It looks like that. It's weird. They didn't try to match it at all.
No, they took some similar attributes and then called it the original Meyer house. I mean, who knows? Maybe they had issues going back to Pasadena, going to the neighborhood that it was originally filmed out. We don't know, but house does not look like the original one.
I think David Gordon Green's crew had a similar issue, but they rebuilt it, right? They
built a replica.
Yeah.
They built an exact replica of the place. Because I think right now the house is either occupied or is
used
placed in a way to where people can go on tour for it.
It's not set up for
It's not set up for filming or anything along those lines, which is completely understandable. But going back to the film, I mean, Loomis just seems to be taunting Michael with Jamie because, again, this kind of throws Loomis under the bus a bit because he makes it seem like he's going to help Jamie at first, then grabs her, holds her in front of him, and seems to be trying to lead Michael somewhere, all while Jamie is at risk. Again, playing completely against the character that we know Loomis to be.
Like holding a stake to a dog or something
essentially.
Like that. Yeah.
But at first you think that he's going to be helping Michael to kill Jamie, but then it hits that Loomis is actually luring him into a trap, and Loomis hits him with a tranquilizer and a chain net, and starts beating down on Michael afterwards.
Which is not the only time we see that, but
no. Everything starts finishing off on a good note, and Jamie is safe and being sent back to the institution, and Michael is being kept in a cell in the police station. Right when the cops get Jamie into the car, the man in black, a figure, again, we've been seeing throughout the movie, shows up and supposedly frees Michael. Michael kills some policeman, and the man in black kidnaps both Michael and Jamie in this chaos, which ends Halloween 5.
Again, we didn't get to see the police getting killed. Would have been a dope scene.
Yeah, there's a lot of moments where we could have easily, or at least the film could have really monopolized on kill scenes, but they seem to happen either off camera or off screen, or just in the sidelines, and we just don't see it.
It's one of the lowest films to me. I already mentioned it. Again, I would rate it like a 2 out of 10. It's not something I go out of my way to rewatch. If I ever do, it's just because I want to see the continuation of like Jamie. I love Danielle Harris's portrayal of Jamie.
Danielle is like a really good actor.
She plays Jamie well on like the screams, man. Like she's so. But other than that, like this movie doesn't really get that much stroke from me. I really don't care too much for it. Funny enough, movie 6 I think gives me a lot more to talk about.
Yeah.
And yeah, Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. Reshoots, re-edits, different endings, theatrical cuts, producer cuts.
Didn't you tell me earlier that The Curse of Michael Myers was like an inside joke amongst the crew? That the original titling was like Halloween 666.
Well, it was supposed to be called Halloween 666, Origin of Michael Myers, but there was many different names. But because of just what happened to this film, it ended up being called The Curse, and it was like a little inside joke amongst the crew, you know?
Yeah, which, I mean, cool, dope name and cool little inside joke, because I don't mind 666, Origin of Michael, but Curse of Michael Myers also seems pretty cool.
Yeah, plus, supposedly, at least on the DVD docuseries of this film, almost everyone involved with this film has disowned it. Yeah. And even the director cites that while both versions are poor, they do prefer the producer's cut just because this film was supposed to be more gothic-y and just, you know, dark and
creepy.
Yeah,
I guess is the best word.
The film was rewritten too. Like there's reports of like when Donald Pleasance signed on to do it, he loved the original draft and the original script, but then as he was getting, you know, everything put into motion that he'd be working on this film, it got rewritten. So, we really don't know what that original version was that Loomis agreed to do, but only I guess the people, you know, involved in this would know. But funny enough, they actually tried to reach out to Bryan Andrews to reprise his role as Tommy Doyle from the original Halloween 78. Andrews did not have an agent though, so they could not get in contact with him, and the part went to Paul Rudd. This was also Paul Rudd's first film. While yes, Clueless did come out before this film, he filmed this film first. So this was technically Paul Rudd's first movie, at least theatrical movie. And it's interesting because Andrews has stated he could have had another shot at playing the part in Halloween Kills 2021, but he turned it down because he retired from acting. And since Paul Rudd had a scheduling conflict, he turned it down as well, so the role was recast again. I did not know they reached out to Paul Rudd for Kills. That's interesting. I cannot see Paul Rudd in that movie. If they were going to give him the version of that we see with Tommy Doyle, I could not.
It would have been pretty cool to see Paul Rudd be not a villain, but almost like a menace.
I'm trying to picture, you know, that famous scene is even in the trailer, or no, I shouldn't say famous, infamous. That infamous scene of Tommy Doyle is in the Kills trailer when he comes out and he's like swinging the bat. I got something for Michael. Hit him with old Huckleberry. Say good night, right? And I'm like, I can't picture Paul Rudd saying that. Like, no, I cannot.
I'm happy that the original actor reprised his role because.
Oh, it's not the original actor. He turned it down from acting. They reached out to the guy from the Breakfast Club and Weird Science.
Well, then they picked out a good person who almost looks identical to the older version of Tommy because, goddamn.
You and I looked up a younger picture of him from like Breakfast Club. Damn, I can't say breakfast right. Breakfast Club, and we said that would look like Tommy Doyle if he aged into a teenager like that. Yeah.
So they did well. They did really well.
Anthony Michael Hall is a really good actor, but he always plays douchebags, man.
Even in Edward Scissorhands.
Edward Scissorhands, yeah.
That's another one. Going back to Curse of Michael Myers, Halloween 6. Movie essentially starts off with Jamie giving birth, and the nurse helps her try to escape. So,
these are notes for theatrical, by the way, but we'll talk on producer's cut later.
Actually, I was about to talk about it now. We watched the theatrical version. The first time I watched Curse of Michael Myers, we watched the producer's cut.
I put the producer's cut off for her because I had never seen it. I wanted to be like a new experience for both of us.
I saw a ritual happen between Jamie and Michael, and then we cut to her trying to give birth. So you can easily assume that Michael assaulted Jamie.
There's even that same line from Jamie, which was played by a different actor. Daniel Harris didn't reprise the role, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
She straight up states, Michael, you won't hurt me, will you? And it's in this weird tone. It's not like a terrified tone, but it's like a... How can I say this? It's without sounding questionable as fuck. It's like... I can't even say it. You know what I want to bring up? You know what? It was a meme amongst our community for a while. You're the best big brother ever.
I was waiting for it.
Because
this time he's the uncle. He's not the brother.
She doesn't sound terrified. It's like she sounds like she's questioning, right? Like his motive or something. Like it's a very weird tone, and that's still in the theatrical cut. However, it's said when the scene like is faded to black, that type of shit. Like you don't really see anybody, you just hear it, and then that's when it immediately quick cuts to her giving birth.
I mean, I wouldn't put it like that. I would just say she seems afraid, but at the same time can't come off too afraid. But you can
weird
take it
tone.
however you want.
It's a weird ass tone, bro.
It is.
See, you agree then. I mean, not with what I said, but it's a weird tone. Like
it is.
Yeah. You're making this weirder.
Yeah. So going back to the film, Jamie, thanks to the help of the nurse, eventually makes it out of wherever she's at. So mind you, she has just given birth. And
like quite literally just given birth.
Women do not move after giving birth. So she's struggling hard. But somehow Jamie's making it through. And
unless you're that lady from Game of Thrones that Ramsay made walk out into the snow with her kid.
Going back. Yeah, no, she makes it out. She gets into a car. She eventually makes it all the way to a bus stop. And Michael finds his way to her and kills her. But before Jamie gets killed, she eventually finds a way to reach out to Loomis. And it's through a radio show. And the radio show host is bashing on the idea of Michael Myers. Because at this point in time, he's been missing for years. They did not find his body after the explosion. So he has to be dead, right? But the conversation that they're having on the radio show is if Michael Myers is alive, and what would they do if they were in a room with Michael? Some lady says something about how like she's really intrigued by him, wants to figure out what's exactly under the mask, yada yada yada. Something very similar to what Book Talk talks about right now. Yeah. And if you're on that side of Book Talk, please understand I'm not bashing against you. It's just something that is rather intriguing, at least here at that point in time. But Loomis, ironically enough, is listening to the radio station, and so is somebody else, Tommy.
Yes, who's now played by Paul Rudd.
And I don't know, like, she eventually gets the message out to him, and the only one Michael doesn't get to kill is his own son, and that's only because Jamie hid him away. So anytime that, like, Michael portrays any form of human emotions, in this timeline anyway, continuously, he is lashing out shortly afterwards, and he's going on a fucking rampage.
This Michael is also a lot fucking bigger.
And mean. And,
like, okay, so John Strode, the brother to Mr. Strode that we see in the earlier films.
Yeah.
He's a pretty big guy. Like, he seems like 5'11"-ish, maybe even like 6 foot, 6'1". Mm-hmm. He's also really big too. And Michael, like, he looked up to Michael. Now, obviously, there's some camera tricks because I don't think any actor for Michael, besides the one for Rob Zombie, has been bigger than 6'2".
Yeah.
But just this Michael, with the way they shot the film, was just...
They made him seem like he was close to 7 feet.
Yeah, he was imposing as shit. Like, it's just... Like, the earlier nurse that Marvelous mentioned, like, when he killed her and lifted her up, she had, like, this much off the ground, and Michael was still taller than her.
Yeah, she wasn't eye level with him. I think the top of her head was, like, at the the mid part of his lip.
Yeah.
So they still had like a good 6 inches or 5 inches or 4 inches to go.
Insane, dude. But yeah, like what she said, just extremely meaner, a lot bigger. And funny enough, I never told you this, but the horror community likes to believe that the reason why Michael is so mean and imposing in this film is because each movie he's getting bigger because the amount of evil from the Thorn curse is in him.
Which is understandable.
It hasn't been passed on yet.
Yeah.
So it keeps building and building in him.
It keeps accumulating.
Yeah.
Which is a cool way to really think about it, especially if you're really honing in on the whole like Thorn lore and the Thorn trilogy and things along those lines.
Because this movie is in the early 90s. He's had that shit in him since he was 6, right? In the 50s?
Since he was 6, he started killing again in 78 heavily, and then ever since 78 until now, so a good 20 years, he's had a lot of blood to feed whatever evil he needs.
Exactly.
To be fed. So I don't know. It's just we get introduced to some characters. We have Kara, who lives across.
Not Laurie, by the way.
Is not Laurie. She lives right across the street from Tommy. Tommy, by the way, is handled in a very interesting way. He is socially awkward, likes to seclude himself, and rents out a room in a home that is owned by an elderly woman.
Mrs. Blankenship or something?
Yeah. Mrs. Blankenship.
Yeah.
Kara also has a son. And the only significance that Kara has is that her family goes by the name of Strode.
Yeah.
And they all live in the old Myers house.
Ironic. The Strode family living in the Myers house.
And the reason why they live in the Myers house is because Kara's father cannot sell, or Kara's uncle could not sell the property, so her father decided to move into the house, knowing exactly what happened in that.
Which is kind of a callback to movie 1, right? Because I think, Strode Realty, like he was having an issue with that house, which
he couldn't
is why
sell it.
He wanted Laurie to drop those papers off or whatever.
The key off, so this way he could go and show it later after Halloween. And I don't know. It's just weird. Like, Tommy is kind of portrayed to be a stalker, but not. He also sits back and seems to be re-listening to whenever Jamie called to the radio show, and goes and even visits the bus stop, finds Jamie's baby there. But mind you, there's a subplot with Kara because she had to move back home. She has her son. She's still going to college. And she has a very estranged relationship with her parents, specifically her father. Her mother seems to be more so on her side, but her mother also seems to be very meek and doesn't really speak out as much. While Mr. Strode is very much a jackass. Not an asshole, just a jackass. He is very rude to his wife, very rude to his daughter, very rude to his grandson, and just seems to hate fucking life. Which I understand, life is hard, but at the same time, you don't need to be a fucking prick, at least like that. So it's just things start to continue, and eventually Tommy and Kara have this interesting interaction where the ice breaks between them and they start to get closer and closer. But mind you, throughout all this, Loomis is completely retired and he's moved to the countryside. And when Michael gets out from wherever he's at, there is this one doctor that Loomis used to work with, I think Dr. Wen, right?
Yeah, who's been recasted again.
Shows up at Loomis's place and says, "Hey, we need you back at Smith Grove." Loomis says, and I quote, "It's not fun to play Halloween tricks on me. Don't do this because I can't come back." Judging by the kind of tone that was carried throughout the films, Loomis either retired on his own accord or was told he needed to retire, one of the two. And he figured out a way to make his peace by writing his dissertation. And unfortunately, Loomis is not able to keep his peace. Curiosity gets the better of him, and he gets very much involved in figuring out what's going on with Michael. Eventually, Loomis and Tommy connect, and Tommy wants to show Loomis Michael's child, who, at this point, mind you, if we're not including the producer's cut, we still 100% don't know if it really is Michael's, but I know because we've watched the producer's cut. So,
the original intention. I mean, if you want to chalk it up and just say, well, hey, man, the producer's cut wasn't released, so that's not canon. It's it was the original intention. They just cut it out. They re-edited it. So we'll just say Jamie's kid for the sake of this video or slash podcast, but it's like
it really is Michael's.
If you want to look at it that way, yeah.
But one thing that I forgot to mention about the estranged relationship between Kara and her parents, so there was a weird moment where Kara is starting to get into a argument with her father. And the only reason why the argument stops is because Kara picks up on the fact that her son is holding a knife to her father's stomach, ready to almost slash at her. Now, I don't know if Mr. Strode, in this movie anyway, has hit Kara before or hit his wife. Probably hit his wife on multiple occasions. But
he hit Kara too, yeah. He hit her earlier in the film. Okay,
then he hit Kara. But there's that tone right there that almost makes it seem that Kara's son is ready to pull any and all stops necessary to ensure that his mom is okay.
I think earlier that night he mentioned hearing voices too.
And he started hearing voices as well. Which Kara makes a note of but doesn't really think too much of it. Going back to where Tommy and Loomis connect, Tommy insists on trying to get Loomis to meet Jamie's child or Michael's child. Yeah. Whatever you want to call it. And the subplot with Kara is still building. So Mrs. Strode eventually finds out that the house that they're living in is the old Myers house, threatens to leave, and this is where Michael starts to show up at his old place, kills Mrs. Strode, and when Kara makes it back to her house after a long day at school, she realizes that her son isn't there, and finds out that he's actually hanging out with Tommy. And Tommy, I think, is slowly starting to introduce the idea of Michael. And Kara has this interesting interaction with Mrs. Blankenship where she says, and I quote, "I used to babysit the child across the street. He also started to hear voices too around the same age that your son is right now."
Little old Mikey Myers, the way she said it.
Little Mikey Myers. So at this point in time, I actually start to panic because I'm convinced that, okay, we're finally going to get a movie where another kid takes on the evil that is within Michael. Michael can finally pass that baton over. The Thorn mark gets given to Danny, if you will, the son.
Also, the whole hearing voices thing, very similar to the novelization of Halloween 78, where they talked about the Celtic legend and how Michael heard voices leading up to when he killed his sister. Similar to how his great-grandfather went crazy when he heard voices too.
Yeah. So, this is all in the novelization, not in the movies or anything.
Yeah, it's not in the 78 film, just in the novelization. So I wonder if they took a little bit from that.
Maybe.
But this production was all over the place, bro.
It really was.
They probably could have.
It really was. Because when Loomis finally makes it to the house, mind you, Kara has a scare. She catches Danny going from Mrs. Blankenship's house over to the Myers house again. Runs after him and saves him from Michael. She gets injured, but makes it back into the house. Once she's back into the house, Tommy and Loomis are back there. And Michael's child, or Jamie's child, is missing at this point. And that's whenever we find the big plot twist. That a lot of the people within the Haddonfield town are in on the cult that is being run by the Man in Black. And they know what Michael really is, which is a force to be reckoned with, or the embodiment of evil. And she guides them to Dr. Wen, who ultimately is the Man in Black.
Not the biggest fan of that.
He is the cult leader. He is the one who's organizing all this kind of wacky ass shit happening all around Haddonfield, and the majority of Smith's Grove is also in on this. And that's one of the reasons why he called Loomis to come back again, because he wanted Loomis to join, since he had such a bright mind, according to Dr. Wen.
Also, I did want to bring up, this is a good point to mention this. This is where we get to, at this point in the film, the producer's cut is a lot different than the theatrical cut.
Yeah.
And I'll give quick examples real quick and then let Marva go back to going through the plot. As an example of the kill on the radio host, when he's walking back to his van, he gets his van mixed up with the van that we've seen since movie 5, and it's the Smith's Grove Sanitarium van. But
Yep.
if you watch the theatrical cut, it doesn't show him walking into that van. It just shows him opening the door to a van. Whereas in the producer's cut, it zooms out and shows the entire van, and it reads the name again, Smith's Grove Sanitarium. So the producer's cut had a very clear understanding of what they wanted to do with this movie, right? But I feel like at the same time, though, they're also spoiling a little too much as well.
Yeah.
Like, also remember, do you remember this, by the way? In the producer's cut, how Jamie doesn't die from Michael, the man in black, puts something in her IV. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That's a whole ass extra scene that happens at the hospital when Loomis and Dr. Wynn are there. You know, it cuts to like Jamie getting, I think it happens when Paul Rudd interrupts, Tommy Doyle interrupts Loomis when he's gone. Like, Jamie gets killed and it's the man in black, like, putting something in there to make sure she's dead. Like,
Doesn't say alive.
again, very, not spoiling a lot, but just, they had a clear understanding of where this movie wanted to go, and a lot of that's missing from here. And a lot of Loomis is also missing in the theatrical cut, but that's because, as Marvelous and I found out, we had known that we had known that Donald Pleasance had already passed away after doing his shoots of the film. But because of the reception and how bad people perceived the ending, they wanted to do reshoots, but they couldn't do the reshoots since Loomis had already passed. So they had gotten a body double, but then just did a lot of extra stuff with Paul Rudd, the actor for Kara, the Dr. Wynn, you know, all those actors. They did a lot of that extra stuff, which is why there's a whole extra scene of Michael killing the entire staff, which you're going to get into in a second, that is not in the producer's cut.
Yep.
So, very interesting. But yeah, around this point, as when Marvel brought up that we're introduced to Dr. Wynn being the man in black, if you're watching both of these films side by side, they're very different. Very different ideas there. And I just thought that was interesting to bring up to you guys. The reason why I'm not a big fan of Dr. Wynn, and I told Marvelous this off screen, is because I feel like the man in black was such a enigma, such a entity, that he almost teleported around the city like Michael did. He almost, you know, he took out an entire police station. Like, it doesn't strike me that somebody like Dr. Wynn could do that. And I get it. You're the cult leader. Anything's possible. But I kind of thought he was going to be more like the enforcer. I didn't think the man in black was the leader of the cult. I kind of thought he was just a guy who got things done. And that we were going to see like maybe a Michael Myers versus the man in black type of fight in movie 6. But we didn't get that, you know? So
I guess not, yeah.
But you go ahead.
I mean, I forgot where I was at, in all honesty.
Oh, you were at the part where they guide him and Mr. Wynn is there and they know where Michael is and everything.
Yeah, so Dr. Wynn has Danny in his lap, and that's when we find out that the man who's been whispering to Danny and the man who was whispering to Michael is Dr. Wynn. Mrs. Blankenship has Michael's baby in her arms and threatens Kara to ensure that she follows Dr. Wynn's orders. And Kara retaliates by jumping through the window. Tommy and Loomis come to, because at this point they're knocked out. And Kara is no longer on the grass, splayed out. Very similar to how Michael was splayed out on the grass in 78. But she's no longer there. So essentially, like, scene cuts and then scene opens up again with Kara being in the same room that Jamie was in the beginning of the film. She's wearing the same white dress too. Loomis and Tommy are out of the equation, but they're pulling up to Smith's Grove Sanitarium because they know that Dr. Wynn has to be there. And Loomis says that he'll end all this once and for all. Loomis confronts Terrence, or Dr. Wynn, and Dr. Wynn explains his fascination with the concept of evil and how Loomis played a part in all of this. That's also another reason why he wanted Loomis to be very much involved.
Yeah.
This is the first time we also get confirmation that Jamie was the mother of Michael's child. Very much Alabama type shit. And this essentially leads to Dr. Wynn extending an invitation to Loomis to join the cult once again. But Loomis refuses. And it seems like Dr. Wynn has started another ritual. He's prepping the operating room. There's a lot of doctors pouring in, and Tommy wanders through Smith's Grove in hopes of freeing Kara. Tommy finally finds the room that Kara is in, but not without Michael coming across Tommy and trying to end the both of them. So at this point in time, the call to still prepping. Tommy and Kara make it out, but Michael does something interesting. He kills all the members of the said cult.
Yeah.
In very brutal ways. And there's blood being sprayed around everywhere. So at this point, the only survivors that we know for sure are Loomis, Kara, Tommy, and Michael's baby, along with Danny. And Kara, Tommy, Danny, and the baby can't really fight for its life, but the other three are fighting for their life. They're making it through the different wings of the hospital. They're trying their best to make sure that they get through. And it reaches a scene where you get to what looks like almost like an experimental lab. There's a bunch of different embryos placed in jars. And
which we can only assume what that is.
Green fluid in there, along with the green fluid being in syringes. So Tommy takes advantage of the situation, naturally so, and gets the syringes that are filled with the green fluid and lays a trap out for Michael.
Yeah.
I think Michael's baby kind of gives away the fact that Danny and Kara are in the room, and Tommy kind of panics because he was going to be the distraction and ends up putting a syringe in Michael. That one syringe doesn't do jack shit. So after a bit of hands being exchanged between Tommy and Michael, Tommy gets his hands on a few more syringes and goes at it again. But before that happens, Michael sets his eyes on Kara. So Kara and Michael also have a big fight scene, but Tommy comes to, gets a couple more syringes, blasts Michael with them in his neck. And we just see him fall down. Tommy, Kara, Danny, and Michael's baby are leaving because they think it's all done. Michael's not moving anymore. I'm pretty sure this fluid is supposed to kill any natural human being.
Especially that many being injected in you.
And they make it out alive. The quad group make it out alive. The one thing that kind of got me, though, was that at the end of the film, it panels back to that same room. It panels back to the same place that Michael was laying down. But the two things that are left behind is the syringe that was left in Michael's neck by Tommy, along with his mask and some green fluid on the floor. Michael never takes off his mask.
Yeah.
So there's two things that could have happened here. Either Michael, dissipated, meaning, he literally evaporated from existence, or he did something completely out of character and took off his mask and decided to walk away. I am going to go with the first option, where the green fluid was too much for Michael's body to handle, and he dissipated into thin air. I refuse to believe that Michael actually would consciously take off the mask, because Michael is never shown to take off the mask. His face is always covered.
He's taken it off a few times. In movie 1,
Not by choice.
No, movie 4 and 5 he does. Remember he takes it off when Jamie's talking to him? Calling him uncle and shit? And then he quickly puts it back on?
Okay, that's one. But he wouldn't leave it there. He puts it back on.
Yeah, I guess Jamie got too close to him. It's that whole,
Yeah. So, going back to my whole point, Michael never willingly takes off his mask. He takes it off in question, but he won't take it off and leave it off. So
maybe the better way to say is that if he doesn't have a relative around who can persuade him to.
I guess. So I don't know. I guess the movie just kind of ends off there. I don't really remember too much of the producer's cut, but
the producer's cut was entirely different. The whole massacre scene doesn't happen. Instead of Loomis and them walking in on trying to go around through the whole Smith's Grove sanitarium, they walk in on the ritual. Michael's just standing there like a bystander watching the ritual happen, and then Dr. Wynn and Michael run off, and then that's when he kills Dr. Wynn, and that's when Loomis shows up later, and then Loomis gets the mark transported on him, and then we see Michael leaving in the Man in Black outfit. And now Loomis is either the caretaker of Michael, like Wynn was, or he's the embodiment of the curse now. So yeah, whichever way you want to take it.
So
completely different ending.
Very much a parallel, like not even a parallel, like completely contradicting endings. But
what do you like more?
I think I like the producer's cut more because it seems like Loomis's obsession ended up becoming the end of him.
I can understand that. I
more
think
poetic.
I think the theatrical cut is a overall better cut film, but I think the producer's cut has some ideas. The only thing I don't like about it is just the idea of the way Michael's used, and I also don't like that flashback to movie 5 when it shows them carrying Michael to the van. It's like Michael looks like a little Scooby-Doo villain wiggling while they're moving him, and I'm just like, this is the same Michael who took out an entire ambulance truck. You're not telling me he can't, like... But I guess the idea was Wynn had control over him, right? Like, there was some sort of, like, overforce there or something that they could sedate him either by spirituality or magic or just with medicine. Like, there was something that they were doing to, like, subdue him, you know?
Yeah.
So, but overall, I think producers cut Curse of Michael Myers is like a 6 out of 10 for me. And
5.
And then I think the theatrical is like a 6.5 out of 10 for me, maybe a 7, but...
Theatrical is a 4.5.
Different. There you go. But let us know what you think. We'll probably even do a quick little TikTok on the unreleased Halloween 7 idea that there was, the Two Faces of Evil. So I don't even think I've told you about that yet, the movie that never happened.
Never happened.
So we'll do a little TikTok on that. We're not going to cover it on this podcast. We're going to get out of here. But we'll be back next week covering Halloween H2O and the Rob Zombie films.
Your favorite.
Yes. So that should be interesting.
If those of you who don't know my tone of voice, I was being very sarcastic. MJ does not like the Rob Zombie films.
Especially one. But anyways, thank you for tuning in as always. Let us know in the comments what you think about the Thorn trilogy overall.
Yeah.
And we can't wait to talk to you guys next week about Rob Zombie and H2O. We will talk to you guys next time.